The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association, connecting Virginians to their government. We're real pleased to have Delegate Scott Garrett here with us today. Welcome, Delegate Scott Garrett.
Thank you, Woody. It's great to be back with you, sir.
Now, if my memory serves me correctly, you are one of four physicians in the General Assembly. I understand you've been retired for a few years.
Yes, sir. I'm a general surgeon in Lynchburg. I serve the city of Lynchburg, parts of Bedford and Amherst County, and about 12 years ago, I stopped operating. I think the good Lord called me to save lives and help people, so I stopped saving lives, but now I'm in the path of trying to help folks.
Great. Did you come from local government? Were you an elected official in Lynchburg?
I did, sir. I was on Lynchburg City Council for 4 years before getting elected here in 2010. This is my 8th session in Richmond.
Congratulations. Tell us a
Thank
little
you.
bit about your district, especially in terms of its employment. Where do people work? How has it fared over the last few years in terms of the economy?
Surely. So we've been pretty blessed in our part of Central Virginia. We have 3 legs to an economic stool that have actually survived pretty well during these lingering recessionary pressures. One is higher education. We have 5 private colleges, Lynchburg College, Randolph College, Sweet Bar College, and Liberty University, obviously the world's largest Christian university, are all in my area. We also have really top world-class healthcare. Our healthcare system, Centra, is really at the cutting edge and is providing phenomenal opportunities for jobs for our folks, but also opportunities for those services for folks. And then thirdly is nuclear technology. Both Arriva and Babcock and Wilcox are in my district. They serve the vast majority of the nation's 104 nuclear power reactors, and they employ a lot of mechanical engineers and a lot of electrical engineers. Those folks also have a lot of other synergistic opportunities and businesses in our community dealing with telecommunications, wireless, and so forth. So we're pretty blessed.
So I take it the new Virginia economy is taking place right in your district.
So yes, we've not had new job announcements. We've not had a lot of opportunity in that regard. Pacific Life bought out Genworth. Genworth had a large presence in Lynchburg, but other than that, we haven't had those opportunities directly in Lynchburg.
I think about a year ago there was a new initiative that was born here, so to speak, Go Virginia. That's an attempt to, actually I believe that idea was brought to the General Assembly by a number of business people around the Commonwealth. How is that going from your perspective?
Surely. So Go Virginia stands for Growth and Opportunity Virginia. It was an effort really started, I think, back when then Governor Tim Kaine and his administration saw opportunities for more regional collaborative efforts with economic development. And one of the models that he really was very appreciative of was in my district in what's called Region 2000. The city of Lynchburg and the 4 surrounding counties is 2,000 square miles. Those localities embodied in that 2,000 square miles 20 years ago started working together for things like regional waste management, regional water, regional jail, regional airport authorities, things that made common sense that don't just simply stop at the 4 walls, the boundaries of your locality. The Go Virginia is really an expansion of that concept. We have a lot of challenges, particularly in Northern Virginia, where you've got a lot of counties that are very proprietary, and they have some economic wherewithal to be able to manage their projects. But roads projects don't just stop at the border of Fairfax County and start up again in Loudoun County or Alexandria or Arlington. They really encompass the entire region. So I think Go Virginia is an opportunity to recognize and realize some of the opportunities we have in working better together. Out my way, the city of Lynchburg has been partnered with a corridor going west and down to actually all the way to Salem and Blacksburg, including Roanoke and the New River Valley. So we're very excited to see some of those projects that collaborative effort will bring to the table, and hopefully improve our opportunity for jobs and economic development in our area.
Great. Well, let's turn our attention to the budget, which is the major issue here. You sit on the Appropriations Committee. Talk to us about what's going on there and some of the priorities that committee has determined to be critical.
Surely, Woody. As most of your viewers know, when we came back to Richmond in session in the first week in January, we were faced with about a $1.2 billion deficit. Our projected revenues exceeded our then expected expenses by about $1.2 billion. On top of that, Governor McAuliffe had a little over $600 million of new spending initiatives that he thought warranted getting resources from the Commonwealth. I think because of that, folks didn't bring a lot of remember the old BHAGs, the big, hairy,
Yes.
audacious goals of 25, 30 years ago. I don't think folks brought those big, audacious goals for funding. So we didn't have as much, as many projects that we had need to fund. Concurrent with that, in 2013, as you know, under House Bill 2313, which was the transportation funding bill, that freed up a lot of what otherwise tends to consume a lot of our time trying to pick and choose winners with transportation projects. So we came with a bit of a deficit. I serve also on the Deeds Commission, which is looking at comprehensively at all of the mental health services provided in the Commonwealth here in the 21st century. And that work we've highlighted and really feel very strongly that we need to look carefully and comprehensively at mental health services. A lot of resources and a lot of effort has been placed during this session to address mental health. And then the opioid crisis,
Yes.
the challenges we have with street drugs with our young people particularly, and the destruction for our families, the destruction for many of them for their lives. So a lot of effort this year has been put towards making sure we have a structurally balanced budget, making sure that the priorities of the General Assembly, which the General Assembly has been here before any four-year term governor and will be here after that individual, make sure that those priorities are attended to, mindful that we do have limited dollars. We do have commitments to our for public education, particularly to our teachers back home. Those are all state-supported jobs, meaning the state supports funding for those opportunities, but they're really the localities are directly responsible through our local school boards. And as you know, we're very proud and very happy in the House budget to have about a 3% salary increase for our state employees and a 2% salary increase for those state-supported positions, our teachers, our deputy sheriffs back home. So we've put a lot of resources and a lot of time and effort and conversations on public education, public safety, public health, and some of those critical public infrastructure needs. So we've had a good year so far, and I look forward to these last 2 weeks and then being able to get back home and help the folks understand what all we've been working on.
Well, why is it so important to have a balanced budget? I know that our Constitution requires that, unlike our friends in Washington who can print money from time to time, but
Right.
there are other implications relating to that, are there not, especially in terms of our AAA bond rating?
So as you know, the Virginia is blessed to have a AAA bond rating. That alone is a significant financial benefit for the Commonwealth. Were we to lose that AAA bond rating, our cost of borrowing money, our cost of being able to afford capital projects, new dormitories at our colleges and universities, new funding for transportation projects, a lot of those would be in jeopardy because of the cost of paying for those. I think the one word, though, and why we need a balanced budget, besides the fact that it's constitutionally mandated, is trust. The people are trusting us as representatives to do not everything that they want, and because we can never please everyone, but to do at least to address the needs that all Virginians are feeling. And despite the improvements in the stock market, improvements in sort of jobs in some sense overall, unemployment is down, well, but there's still a lot of marginally invested folks that are on the edge. They're either underemployed or have chosen not to seek employment. We do have commitments to those folks, and I think they trust better when we balance that budget.
Now I understand that K through 12 is being held harmless at about $1 billion a year, but that's at a level of what, funding back to 2009, something like that?
So this time last year, in fact, only 7 months ago, back in June the 30th of 2016 was the end of the last biennial budget. That biennial budget, 2-year budget, was $98 billion. This biennial budget that we're currently in, that started July 1 of 2016, is $105 billion. We've added $7 billion of new spending at the state level without raising any taxes or raising any fees. A lot of that is non-general fund money, meaning monies that come to the Commonwealth of Virginia from federal sources, grants, internally generated fees like tuition and fees at our colleges,
Right.
and those kinds of things. I think one of the challenges is with public education, we put over $1 billion of additional money in this current biennial budget from where we were, again, just June the 30th of 2016. In addition to that, we were able to, in our budget, at least in the House budget, I've not studied the Senate's budget version yet, but in the House budget, we don't have any direct cuts to K-12 education. There is a clear and compelling clarion call that we will continue to do what we can, as we can, in our public schools. Our children are our future, and education does matter.
Getting back to those state employees who hopefully will get the raise that's part of the House budget, talk to us about those public safety employees, state troopers, deputy sheriffs whose salaries have proved to be quite problematic. I understand that we're losing state troopers to other states, even local jurisdictions, because of the salaries that they are paid.
So when we employ anyone, any business, any organization employs anyone, there are 3 elements to that. First is what you start them at, what it takes to recruit them to your business, in this case to become a state employee. Second is how do you retain them in that position? Are you providing to meet their family's needs and so forth? And thirdly is how do you reward them when they step up to the plate and really go the extra mile and put in the extra effort and help us innovate and hopefully have some savings at the end of the day. What we found with, I serve also on the Speaker's Commission on Compensation and Virginia Retirement System. What we heard loud and clear and early on in our deliberations was the challenge that our state police have in recruiting folks. They had, I forgot how many empty vacancies, I think 70 or so empty vacancies. And a big part of that is because they were paying less starting salary than you could to join the Richmond Police Department, say here in this area. So one focus we have in the House is to raise that. I think the starting salary is $36,000.
$36,000 is the starting salary now.
Yes,
Wow.
sir. And raise that to $43,000, which puts it much more competitive with some of the surrounding law enforcement agencies here in this area. Likewise, our Capitol Police, same thing. Their starting
Right.
salary is around $36,000, and I think they'll be going to about $42,750, I think. So that's one part of it, is how do we recruit folks and hopefully can now fill those ranks with qualified young men and women that will serve us with great honor and distinction. Second part is how do we retain them? Part of the retention is the difficulty we have in over time as we give more and more money as starting salaries. The folks that have been there 5 years, 10 years and beyond, their pay gets compressed, and we call that pay compression. And we had to address pay compression. So there are elements of our budget to address that for our local sheriffs and deputies and so forth as well. And then finally, when you've served this Commonwealth for 30, 40 years, there is a sense that we absolutely need to stand by folks with their long-term benefits. We have tried to structurally improve the funding for Virginia retirement system. Its total pension liability continues to go down as the net worth or the valuation of the retirement system's funds improve. So those 3 areas we've spent a lot of time and effort as we say, on the ninth floor here, where the House Appropriations Committee meets to address those areas.
Talk to us a little bit more about the Virginia retirement system, because it has moved from a defined benefit type of program to a hybrid, and there are more opportunities and choices for employees now. For example, 401ks are now offered, as I understand it.
Yes, we've again heard loud and clear that what serves us best is to be able to offer those choices. Lots of folks are very mobile in today's economy with where they can work. In my dad's day, I think folks kept their jobs probably about 18 years or so. Today, I saw a recent statistic, the time that folks are keeping their jobs is less than 2 years. There's just tremendous turnover. If you're not offering a package that will retain folks, you're gonna lose those folks. Part of the Virginia retirement system is a manifestation, again, of that third component. At the end of the day, the Commonwealth will still stand by you and provide an opportunity for you in your retirement. The challenge with a defined benefit plan is the prices and the financial reality that has just skyrocketed beyond our capacity to be able to manage it. A defined contribution plan is much more directed. When you contribute some percentage or some resources, the state will match that, and those resources will be able to travel with you when you change your jobs. So it meets a lot of the needs, more so of our state employees.
Now, I think a couple of years ago, the Speaker commissioned another study to ensure the financial long-term viability of the Virginia retirement system. How is that going?
So I would say it's going extraordinarily well. The commission itself has been meeting regularly and getting a great deal of information, testimony from various different stakeholders for us to try to better understand the complexities sometimes and the nuances sometimes of how our compensation and retirement system works. But to put it in perspective, in September of 2009, when I was running for office, VRS's valuation had gone down to about $43.9 billion. Today it's over $70 billion. So we are addressing those issues. We're putting resources into VRS, and the VRS trustees and their board are doing a very good job of managing those resources so that we can, at the end of the day, our total pension liability continues to go down, and we'll, at the end of the day, have the resources to be able to continue to meet our commitments. Again, it's all about trust.
Teachers, they are subject to a raise this year as opposed to a one-time bonus that initially the governor suggested. And as I understand it, there are a couple of ways to fund that. One is a direct contribution that the locality has to match. The other is through the state lottery program. Talk to us about those two different approaches.
So we have 135 various school divisions in our Commonwealth. 123 of those 135, all but 12, after we adjourned in March, gave raises and or bonuses, one or both, to their employees. So the localities stepped up to try to address the needs that they understood for their teachers. Again, those are state-supported positions, not state employees directly. The Commonwealth puts probably about a third or so of the K-12 public education dollars come from the state for most of our school divisions. We heard loud and clear that they continue to languish. It's very difficult to recruit young people to go into education, those great educators to continue to work in our communities, and particularly some of the challenged communities that we have. And it hurts all of us when any of our schools are denied accreditation, when they're not keeping to a certain standard level. So our effort has been to try to address some of those salary issues, but it's also to address, in the last 2 years, we've spent a lot of time on the standards of learning, the SOL reform efforts. I think we wanted to give it a bit of a breather and see how those efforts are going to be working through. As you know, at the federal level, they changed from the No Child Left Behind to the ESSA, Education, whatever the ESSA is. Every Student Succeeds Act, I think it is. And under ESOL, again, that's a relatively new program under then former President Barack Obama. And I think there's time to try to see how that's going to work and get incorporated into our curricula and hopefully show positive results at the end of the day.
Now, what about schools in our rural areas, for example, Southwest, Southside Virginia, that have really been hurt as a result of the recession? It's very difficult for them to even get students nowadays, let alone teachers. Is there special funding for those schools in the hopper, so to speak?
There is, sir. In the House budget, we came up with a very clever and a very creative program we call 10-10-10. So, and this affects 40 localities in the Commonwealth. Out of the 324, 40 of them will directly benefit from it. We put $9 million into a program that says if your school has less than 10,000 students and over the last 10 years has had more than a 10% decrease in the number of students that you educate, by the education formulas, the amount of money that goes directly to these schools is predicated or determined by how many students you teach. It's about $6,000 or $7,000 per student. So if you lose 10 students, only 10 students in a school division with 8,000 students, it doesn't seem like a lot of students, but at the end of the day, that's a lot of resources that you lose. This 10-10-10 program that we've put into the House budget, and I'm hopeful the Senate will favorably receive it, what it effectively is an effort to try to get some resources back directly to those 40 schools that have been impacted by losing through attrition, losing the number of students that they teach and getting less resources. They happen to be in a lot of the counties in the smaller divisions, particularly in Southside and Southwest Virginia.
Now, you mentioned a number of very prominent private institutions in your district. What's happening in terms of funding for the community colleges and for our institutions, public institutions of higher learning in the public arena?
So probably the most direct thing is the tuition grants, the TAG grants that we have for private colleges and universities. Three of the colleges in my district, Randolph College, Lynchburg College, and Liberty University, a large number of their students benefit directly from these tuition assistance grants. It's about $3,300 a year towards their education. On the one hand, they're private colleges. On the other hand, the state can invest relatively small amount of money, $3,300 per year, to get students educated, and now we get more nurses and teachers and engineers and accountants and folks that are willing to get out there and do the work that Virginians need done.
Cybersecurity is another area. Apparently, a high school student who obtains a certificate can get a very well-paying job these days.
I think so as well. That's been a priority, I know, of Governor McAuliffe, and I think governors around the nation have realized that this is a huge threat to our national security and are trying to address it at that level. We have several companies in my district that directly work with cybersecurity. I know it's a big issue in Northern Virginia as well, where a lot of the Department of Defense work is done. But we are putting resources towards that arena. It's a very exciting opportunity for young people that are really going to be at the cutting edge of a new industry as it evolves.
Now, you mentioned the Deeds Commission. I know you have some legislation dealing with mental health and other health-related issues. Why don't you talk to us about some of those issues?
Surely. So I chair one of the four working task force with the Deeds Commission. That my task force is crisis response and emergency services. Two of the issues that we heard loud and clear in the last 3 years that we've been, the Deeds Commission has been meeting, is in two areas. One is the challenge that local law enforcement, our sheriff's deputies, particularly Southside, Southwest Virginia, along the valley, there may be a county that only has 2 deputies on duty in the evening, and they're now confronted with someone who needs to be transported to an emergency facility or a psychiatric evaluation, a place where a psychiatric evaluation can be done, and that might be on the other end of the county or in another county. And now you've tied up all law enforcement transporting them. So we're looking for a creative way of doing alternate transportation, having folks other than uniformed law enforcement officers in a law enforcement vehicle transporting them. And I have legislation to address that. The second is in the arena of trying to provide the services in areas where we are underserved with psychiatric nurses, psychiatrists, and psychologists, and so forth. Telemedicine or telepsychiatry, the ability to provide these services from the distance, is a growing, rapidly growing area of great promise. And I have legislation to allow in the code to allow folks to be able to practice telemedicine.
I think we mentioned earlier this opioid epidemic. It's not only related to the Commonwealth, but it's a nationwide problem. What are we doing about that?
We have a very robust package, I think 7 bills that pediatric dentist doctor, Delegate Todd Pillion, has brought to us to specifically address this. The Commissioner of Health, Dr. Levine, as you know, in last year declared the Commonwealth of Virginia a public health emergency in the arena of naloxone or Narcan.
Right.
It's a medicine you can spray it in the nose for folks that are overdosing and have overdosed in front of you. With the proper training, you can grant access to these medications that are life-saving. And that's part of our package, is to further address and provide these resources, putting money towards acquiring those particular drugs to be used. We also have legislation to look specifically at the regional challenges we have. So Northern Virginia, it's heroin. That's their biggest problem. Southwest Virginia, big problem with opioids, prescription drugs that are, you might get a prescription for an athletic injury, for pain management, and a lot of those medicines are getting redirected or misdirected and onto the streets, and we've got legislation to address that as well.
Now, what about the ability of a patient to doctor shop, for example, in terms of getting a prescription?
So 2 bills in that arena. One is we have what's called the Physician Monitoring Program, or PMP. The PMP is something that I, as a physician, if I'm in the emergency room and I'm going to write a prescription for narcotics, I am required to check online the PMP, the Physician Monitoring Program, to make sure that this person hasn't just been in one of the adjoining hospital's emergency rooms an hour ago and is effectively sort of doctor shopping. And I think that's beginning to make some improvements. The second is a bill that Delegate John O'Bannon is carrying, and it's about $4 million for emergency department care coordination, so that if you show up at your local hospital's emergency room complaining of abdominal pain, all of the emergency departments of all the hospitals around the state will now be connected with their information system, such that I, as a doctor, can go online and see, did you just leave Roanoke Memorial's Hospital or Inova's Hospital with the same concerns? Maybe you've already had this CAT scan done and you're sort of, we call them frequent flyers, folks that just show up with the same complaints in our emergency rooms. It's a huge cost imposition to our hospitals, and we're trying to address that.
Got about 30 seconds left. You did mention heroin as a problem in Northern Virginia. I guess that is related to this opioid addiction. For those who no longer can get a prescription, apparently heroin is very cheap.
It's very cheap. It's readily available. There's a very innovative and I think exciting program. It's called HARP, the Heroin Addiction Recovery Program. The sheriff at Chesterfield Jail has put this in place. There are about 50 inmates, and it's peer-to-peer recovery specialists that work directly with this program. I'm excited about that.
Great. Well, thank you for being here, Delegate Scott Garrett. Good to see you again.
Woody, you as well, you and your viewers.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.